Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're going to wait one more minute for people to allow people to join on time, and then we're going to get started. Okay, so we're just on time, so we're going to get started to respect everyone who arrived on time. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's webinar in PractiTest guest webinar series, a skeptical guide to AI in software testing, where we're going to host today Marcus Merrell. Before I'm going to hand over to Marcus, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to PractiTest for those of you who are not familiar with what we do. So a little bit about us. PractiTest is a centralized testing hub, a test management platform, end-to-end enterprise grade, okay, that powered QA intelligence and AI. Our platform has multiple modules that covers all the way from requirements, either as a standalone or connected through bug trackers or issue trackers such as Jira, ClickUp, and ADO, to test execution models where we integrate, again, multiple tools, and to close the loop, issue module to report, okay, bugs and identify them. We are a SaaS solution. We adhere to every requirement to security and compliance standards such as ISO 27001 and SOC Type 2, and of course GDPR compliant for those of you within the EU. We were hosted within the AWS cloud. You can see that we are leaders in G2 in multiple platforms. As I mentioned, we are an end-to-end platform, so you can start to everything related to managing testing, from the planning and vision part to execution to reporting issues, and not less important, to measurement through dashboards and reports within our platform or as integration with basically any other tool. Among our customers, you can find customers from various locations and various industries. I think this is quite clear to most of you that any company nowadays is in a way a software company, and as such needs to manage their testing properly and to do it in a proper tool. So you can see, I assume you're familiar with some of the logos here across the globe, across multiple industries. So this is a sample of our customer base. We run live training and Q&A session for those of you who would like to join. Those are run twice a month. You're more than welcome to scan the QR code and join us, or you can reach out to our website and sign up for a free trial to see if this can elevate some of your challenges in regards to managing testing. So that was a short introduction. And now, before I hand over to Marcus, let's see if Marcus, are you here with me today?
I'm here.
Is here. Before I hand over
Can you see me?
I can see you. Thank you. I will say two words about him when we switch slide sharing. So Marcus currently works as a principal technical advisor at Sauce Labs. But this is today, and he holds more than 20 years of experience in test. And as such, he uses this experience to build robust customer-centric solutions around test automation, software architecture, and release management, okay, all related to testing, but not just. And I think one last thing that's worth talking about Marcus is the fact that he's a member of the Selenium project leadership committee, and that he enjoys playing the piano and making robots, which is two unique hobbies that can combine together, makes you an interesting person. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Marcus to talk about AI in testing.
Thanks, Noah. I appreciate that. I really appreciate the partnership between Sauce Labs and Practive Test and the integration that we have between the products and stuff like that. Because it's funny. I think there's a lot of there's so many tools out there for testing, and it's really just a difficult discipline to maintain, control over. And everyone has their own specialty. We specialize in execution and insights and analysis, and you specialize in management of the customer centric piece of it, which I think is super important. So I appreciate the partnership.
Likewise.
Um, yeah, cool. Yeah, I found piano is interesting to me just because it's a big machine that you make beautiful art from, and I think that's great. Also, I like that I have in common with the inventor of Selenium, Jason Huggins, that he also makes robots. Like that's a thing he does um, right now. That's what he did after kind of stepping back from Selenium, which I think is he's a fascinating person. So cool. Well, I guess I can get started. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you for the introduction. Today, I'm gonna sort of be a tester, which may be a good or a bad thing. But basically, I brought since the introduction of ChatGPT in October 2023, I've sort of brought my tester's eye to really looking at the claims and the promises and figuring out what is the reality of, like, where are the bugs, where what can I do to make sure that people are actually getting value out of this, because there's a very different I think level of expectation between what I want and what I need out of tools and the unbelievable breathless hype and promise that we've been getting from AI vendors for a year and a half. And this is going to at times sound like a bit of a rant, so apologize, but I hope there's something here because there's a lot of stuff to be argued with, and I know that a lot of the stuff I say, you might say, well, this will be fixed in 5 years. Well, the people out there who are selling this stuff to you say it's already there, and it's simply not. So I'm gonna try to present you some facts and figures, and not really to just say that these tools are bad. I use them every single day, but to sort of challenge the notion that they are, as great as people say they are, and to bring some reasonable, skepticism, I guess you'd say, some reasonable objections or reasonable challenges to some of the notions that we get. And I think that, to me, the first thing I want to challenge is a lot of AI hype is around productivity. How can we make developers more productive? By a lot of guesstimates, they say, well, developers are going to be 80% more productive, 50% more productive, 30% more productive. It depends on which which charlatan you want to follow, what kind of a number you're going to get from them. But let's talk about the reality of productivity for a software developer, and I include testers in that, automated testing developers in that as well. To me, we're all writing software, we're all writing stuff that is hopefully production worthy and very high quality. And then we'll talk about the challenges and the claims that are being made by AI vendors and how those stack up to reality. And then we're going to talk about how to mash these things together and actually get value out of these tools. So at the end, I'm going to give you some recommendations and things to look out for. Sound good?
That's wonderful.
All right, good. So let's first talk about productivity as a concept. I'd like to hear people in the chat. If people are sounding off in the chat, how much time do you spend coding? If you're a developer, your job is to write features or create tests. How much time do you spend coding? I'm going to give everyone just a minute or two, and I'll tell you just that while I was in profession, a lot of my work centered around mentorship and teaching, so that would reduce the amount of time I spent testing, but it wasn't a huge amount of time. And I feel this is a very honest answer from Lucas, 10 to 20%. Let me tell you that there's a survey that says that median developers spend 52 minutes per day writing code. You pay someone for 8 hours, they write code for 52 minutes. You may not expect that, you may not see this, but if you go back into the days of DeMarco and Lister's book Peopleware, which came out, I believe, in the late 90s, this has held steady. This is a kind of a constant throughout all of the changes that we've gotten in the developer workload over the past few years. And so I'm curious, what's the problem? What are the productivity killers? Is that 52 minutes actually, should that just be the goal now that it's been true, a constant for 30 years more? Should that just be the goal, 52 minutes? Or should we actually try to up that number a bit? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure we can. I'm not sure it's reasonable. But what are the big productivity killers? Anyone guess?
I would guess there's a lot of idle time.
Idle time? Yeah. I mean, goofing off. If you read Peopleware by DeMarco and Lister, they actually listed that as goof off time is really good for the brain, which I think is interesting. Waiting for provisioning, fantastic. Meetings, yeah, we'll get to that. That's my favorite one. Context switching, I think, is seen as sort of the largest one. So if you understand flow state, mostly what I find is that when I was in school as a computer science student, I didn't finish my degree in that. That's another story. That's the most time I ever had in my life to write code because I didn't have a whole bunch of other people changing requirements on me. I was given an assignment. I did it. I had hours and hours and hours. And when you're in that flow, and then someone calls you back in my day on the phone that had a physical bell in it, you lose about 23 minutes on average to get that's how long it takes to get you back on track. 23 minutes from an interruption. And now add to that these little distraction rectangles that we have, as well as Slack and email. And if you work in an office like I do, people actually coming to your desk and bothering you, which is not to say that you can completely avoid that ever, but if you can believe it, this is the number one killer according to the source that's cited on the bottom right in that shortened link. Here's some others. Change, volatility, uncertainty, expectation management. There's no definition of done. How are you even going to finish? Reacting to technical debt. That's a thing we do constantly in the business. Bad management, leadership, coaching goes to that bureaucracy thing that someone mentioned. Disruptive, unhelpful, uncooperative team members. You ever have someone you work with or multiple people where you're basically doing their job too, because everything they do, you have to undo it and then redo it, and that even takes longer than if you had just done it yourself the first time. Working across time zones, unfortunately, that is a necessary. That's just the way the world works. This might be the one on here, this list, that you just can't avoid, and that's just how we're going to have to accept and embrace it. Bad tooling, pretty big cost and productivity, and that would include unnecessary tooling because someone told you need to switch from this thing to this thing because we got a better deal on it in procurement, and so it's going to cost you a year to retrofit. That kind of a thing. Oh yeah, and meetings are my killer. That's the thing that keeps me from them. And somebody asked me a while back as an advisory board member to a project, what can AI do for you? And I was like, well, can it get me out of meetings? If you give me an AI tool that will get me out of meetings, I guarantee you my productivity will go through the roof. And of course, that is not even being talked about right now. Yeah, so we've talked about problems with productivity and stuff like that. And I think that it bears repeating that our problem is not how do we take 8 hours and make it into, can I squeeze 12 hours worth of work into 8 hours? It's how do I make that 52 minutes more valuable? Can AI even do that? And that's the question we're going to ask. The better question is, if AI can do that, it's a 30% improvement on 52 minutes, an hour and 7 minutes. All the trillions of dollars that have been invested in AI for developer productivity going to get me from 52 minutes to an hour and 7 minutes. Doesn't seem likely that that's worth the trillions. So I've been getting this question a lot lately with my company, Sauce Labs, because we've not gone wide, honestly, yet. We're preparing it, but we've not gone wide with what our AI story is. And I think it's well intentioned. I understand the question. I understand why people are asking the question, because we've got competitors who are going wide with a whole bunch of stuff. And the truth is, our story is that we're being careful. And our story is that AI is a tool that we're going to use to deliver you amazing value. My father is a carpenter. He makes, he's a painter, and he makes picture frames for people. So you bring in something to him and he will frame it. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be large, small, gigantic. It could be whatever. He's been doing it for 60 years. And he told me at one point that if he had $10 million, he would just stop charging his clients and still build frames all day. He's 78 years old. He's my hero. To me, this question, what's your AI story, is like walking into my company, which has built an amazing set of data centers with 8,000 phones. We've reversed engineered the USB drivers for all of our equipment so that we can actually manage and dig into the telemetry of mobile phones with unpublished AIs and undocumented APIs. And people say, what's your AI story? It's like asking my father, you walk in and you see these beautiful paintings and you see these frames everywhere, and you say, what's your deal with hammers? What are those hammers doing for you? And he's like, oh, I use hammers. And you're like, well, what are the hammers doing? And it's just ridiculous to me to walk into a company and challenge them with what's your AI story. It's like asking about hammer. Why does it matter? I am delivering you value, and if I'm not delivering you value, then that's the question you need to be asking me. That's a question that if a vendor comes in and says, we've got a great AI story for you, you're like, what value is it giving me? I don't understand. Now, the problem is, the reality of the situation is we can't keep our heads buried in the sand and pretend that this isn't a thing that's in constant demand. We can't. We have to we have to come out with an AI story. And we already have a good one. We've had AI in our product for 10 years. We've had AI in our product for longer than most of our competitors have existed. It's just that we're focused on delivering value and understanding our customers' needs, not on there's a shiny toy. I mean, there was a conversation in 2020. What is Sauce Labs doing with cryptocurrency? I'm not even making that up. So I'm not necessarily saying that those two things are the same, because AI does actually have a use case. If you want to get a real skeptical rant from Marcus, ask me about crypto someday. But I think that it, we are about customer value and insights and giving you the ability to understand what's happening with your software. And we're using hammers just like everyone else. It's just not our headline because it's a means to an end, not an end in itself. So let's talk about why we shouldn't necessarily believe all of the hype that's going on with all the AI vendors out there. I also wanted to make a pitch for my little image on the bottom left here. The image itself is not terribly important. You can tell instantly that it's AI generated. There's a number of clues to that fact. One thing I'm trying to do, I actually have in the speaker's notes of this presentation, I'm trying to make sure that when I use an AI generated text or image, I include the prompt that I use to make it, as well as the name and version of the model I used to create it. So this was probably made with, I'm not looking at the speaker's notes, but I believe this was used. It was generated by ChatGPT, probably either 3.5 or 4.0, whichever was the first one that actually started giving you images without much effort. And the prompt is in the speaker notes here. I want to try to pitch everyone doing that, because I think it's a good way for us to sort of say, well, that's a really cool image. What'd you use to produce it? Or that's a really great turn of phrase. I want to see, like, maybe I should move to Anthropic or Grok instead, because this was ChatGPT and I that's the one I have the subscription for. But if I like what I'm seeing out of this other model, let's track it down. And also, I think it's better just for transparency in general to say, yep, I'm using AI generated images. Let's put this out there. This is not copyrighted, not copyrightable at this point. It's just a thing I'm doing. So yeah, let's talk about these problems with AI. And I might even have a bonus one in there as well. These are not whatever you call it. These are not knockouts. These are not saying you should not use these tools. These are saying, watch out. If someone tells you they have solved any of these three problems today, March 19th, 2025, they are lying to you if they say they have solved these problems using large language models and generative AI. So there's a lot of stuff they can do to mitigate, but they have not been solved. And according to Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, some of these are inherent features of LLMs, and you need to understand that. So hallucinations, I think we all know what these are by now. We've been looking at the funny ones for a year and a half. When an AI system gives a response that's not coherent with what the humans know to be true. There are some hilarious ones out there. The one that, this is an old one, but like dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period were able to build a successful civilization by living communally and developing a wide variety of skills. That's a story that ChatGPT told. This is what happens when you train yours on Reddit, train your model on Reddit and the Onion. The world record for crossing the English Channel entirely on foot is held by Christoph Wandrach of Germany. I have not Googled Mr. Wandrach, but I assume that he's not capable of walking on water. I think that's reserved for someone else. Um, and when you sign into Claude now, Anthropic's Claude, it says it may occasionally generate incorrect or misleading information. You need to double check. It's not intended to give advice. I wonder how many lawsuits were started as a result of a lack of a disclaimer for the first few months of this particular one. Now, the reason this is the case, these hallucinations, are because LLMs are not reasoning, they are not thinking, they are not understanding of anything except for the context of what's happening right this minute. Every single time it reads and generates an answer, it is using a random number generator to figure out the context of all of the things that's been given, and to understand the probability of words existing next to each other. It is inhumanly good at this, which is the reason it can fool people into thinking it's actually thinking and reasoning, because the technology and the compute power is so solid, and the indexing of the data set that it's using is so fast that it's able to fool you into thinking that context is pure and perfect. But the truth is, it is a random number generator that is doing an exceptionally good job of putting things together. And once in a while, because it was trained, because of the data that it was trained on and the people who guided the training, it simply cannot be right all of the time. Like I said, Sundar Pichai, Google CEO, said this is an inherent feature. So what do we do about it? Well, fine tuning is a thing. We know this. We can actually go and further train, and we can say eliminate that source, eliminate that source. Like don't train yours on the Onion. Like don't train it on Reddit. There's a lot of risk to that stuff. Even though you might have a smaller model at the end, it's still something you need to watch out for. But fine tuning, really good. RAG models, tuning a model to a specific set of data. That's the same thing that we're wondering here. Sometimes when we play around with how we can use AI to generate log analysis for testing and stuff like that, it's like, well, do we need our model to be trained on all the works of Shakespeare? Lovely, but I mean, it might give you a good turn of phrase in the English language analysis, but we don't need that. So let's constrain the model to what's needed for this kind of test. Chain of thought prompting is a way where it's been demonstrated pretty solidly. And while it's not a guarantee of success, one way to very much mitigate hallucinations is to try to get the model reasonably in small steps to sort of get you to the conclusion that you want. Rather than writing a 7-sentence paragraph prompt, you can write small prompts, 1 or 2 sentences at a time, to try to have a very iterative conversation with the model and lead it to a conclusion, that kind of thing. And that helps it with building context within the token set that it's been given for a particular conversation. One thing that is worrisome is the idea that people have started to do this, although I think that I'm not really sure where it's gone just in the last couple of months, because I've given this presentation several times over the last 6 months, and every single time I give it, I have to spend 2 or 3 hours updating it with the latest information. This one in particular, I keep hearing that people are not doing this anymore, and then people are doubling down on it. So I'm not really sure which is true, but I keep hearing that if you train one AI model on the outputs of another AI model, it's either good or bad depending on who you're talking about. But what I'm afraid of is that it's going to lead to this multi-generational incestuous set of defects that lead to what one person on Twitter called the Habsburg AI. If you don't know, the Habsburg family, the Prussian royalty, was so inbred that they began to have a protruding jawline that would become more pronounced as generations kept inbreeding and marrying their relatives, close relatives. And what we've seen in some outputs of AI that is used to train other AI is that by the 9th generation, it's outputting complete gibberish. You can't even understand any of the text that's been created as a result of it. So this is a problem that is being mitigated and being worked on all the time, but it's not being solved because, from what I understand, March 19th, 2025, it is unsolvable. And so every time you adopt an LLM, you have to understand the risks, and that you need to understand the limitations, encourage verification practices. Now, this is a very human motion that you're putting into your LLM work, and I understand that, and that is unfortunately where we are right now. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Improve the design of the prompts. That is something you get through practice. For the first few months that ChatGPT was around, prompt engineering was talked at as the next great new job skill to have. I haven't heard that in a while. I still think it's true. I think maybe at this point it's so ubiquitous, it's just understood to be true. Iterate and make it interactive. Make sure you're having, what I would say is my best uses of these tools has been in brainstorming and getting through a writer's block. If you treat it, I'm sitting here telling you that it's not a human, you shouldn't treat it like a human, but I'm actually saying when you talk to it like a human. Like, iterate with it, have a conversation, have a back and forth, challenge it when it's wrong, and when it gets wrong, consistently wrong, and starts to double down on its wrongness, start a new session, because it gets tainted over time. And every question, every interaction you have with ChatGPT or any of these LLMs builds upon the previous tokens, and so its wrongness can multiply. I would assume, and I would love to see in the comments, people have seen this kind of thing where one time I actually was trying to design a small roof for a fish tank I was building, and I had it reason through with me the angles I would need to cut the wood in order to make a hip roof with a certain height, with a certain set of dimensions. And it was completely wrong. It was wrong on literally every dimension. In the end, if I had followed its advice, I would have ended up with a flat roof that had beveled edges. Stupid. And and the more I tried to challenge and say, no, that calculation's incorrect, that's wrong, it would keep coming back to the same thing. Start a new session, say, here are my inputs. And then the second time I went through that conversation, it got it right. Now, it drove me insane, but it taught me a valuable lesson about, a tainted session within ChatGPT. Another thing to understand about when you do a chain of questions and a full conversation with ChatGPT is that every time you ask it this question, a new question on the same session, it is resubmitting and reprocessing all of the tokens that you've had on it before. So it compounds upon itself. And that, for your $20 a month subscription to ChatGPT, is fine. But if you're starting to pay API token costs that actually charge you a consumption, that starts to add up real fast. So the first question you ask, it's going to charge you for 1,000 tokens. The second one's going to be 3,000 tokens. And by or the end of a very long session, you're in the millions of tokens, and you're costing yourself dollars per query. We'll talk more about cost here in just a minute. You need to incorporate some external tools and checks. Now, this can be as simple as importing the code or using Copilot and making sure that the compiler is working and that it's actually, compiling your code for you, that kind of thing. But it also might involve real code reviews. And we'll get to some of the productivity here at some point. Now, continuous education and updates, obvious. I mean, we're all doing this, right? We're all following LinkedIn and all the articles that are being written breathlessly about AI. You cannot scroll past 3 articles on LinkedIn right now without coming across someone who either is trying to sell you something or make some grand pronouncement in order to create engagement, or to do like I do and say, I'm not sure it's true, and then get booed at. So the next thing is non-deterministic output. Now, this is good and bad, but it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. In the testing world, I have found you don't want different output every single time you talk about testing a product, right? So talk about where it's good. If you're having a conversation and you're trying to, like I said, brainstorm through something, brainstorm through a problem, figure out how to get out of this roadblock and try to see how you can get past these issues that you've been facing. The fact that it won't give you the same answer every single time, pretty great. Because every time you have a conversation with it, it's like asking a different friend for a second opinion. And so it's very, very helpful to understand that, I didn't get the answer I wanted the first time, couldn't help me get my block. Or if you want to have it compose a sonnet and you didn't like the first one, you just ask again and it'll give you another one, and it'll be pretty different and maybe the second time will work better. So it's very good. Where I'm a little bit less happy about it is that, if I'm generating test code and it needs to work the same way every time, then I probably shouldn't just feed it English language and have it generate the code every single time. I need to have it generate code that I can then track in a version control system. And there's an 80% chance that when you do that, you're going to have to edit the code and change it and then put it in your version control system. And then when the product inevitably changes and it breaks the test, you're going to have to regenerate that test all over again. Probably, if you're relying on LLMs and copilots for this kind of a work, the code is probably going to be quite different the second time you do it, even though it's essentially covering the same thing. So what I have found, the experiments that we've run on trying to do test generation, understanding that a lot of companies are doing it better than we have in our experiments. You just need to make sure that it's satisfying your needs, and those needs are usually that I need to run through an objective set of steps in order to make sure that not only does the product work the way it should for the user, but that the sequence of steps I'm asking it to follow still work as well as they did last time I ran them. And so having it run willy-nilly and do different steps every time, it's kind of a non-starter. Unless that's your method of testing, I would just say that's kind of in its own category of like autonomous test exploration, which seems like a very interesting and emerging test category. I just don't think that is currently a good substitute for the kind of regression testing that we've been doing for the past 20 years. Not to say that it's not valuable, it's just say that it's a big leap for some people to go from my test does the same thing every single time to, well, it accomplishes the goal, but it doesn't actually do the same way every single time. Kind of jarring for some folks. What do we do about this? We use the LLMs for what they were intended for. We use them to get through blocks. We use them to enhance our thinking, to assist us in generating these things, to give us a leg up. My biggest success stories with these tools have all come from needing to do something, usually in my case, that connects two pieces of technology together. And I need to do it fast. So recently, I had to download a whole bunch of data from GitLab and import it into a Snowflake database by doing a JSON, basically pulling down data from a SQL query from GitLab API using GraphQL. And I had not used GraphQL in 8 years, so I was really rusty. And then put that into JSON and then upload that to Snowflake using Snowflake's API. Authentication tokens for GitLab, authentication tokens for Snowflake. SQL query that I didn't feel like I wanted to write. I just wanted it to write it for me, and then I would check the work. And then I think that this would have taken me 8 to 12 hours to do because of my Python is rusty, my SQL is rusty, my GraphQL is rusty. But using ChatGPT, I think I did it in 2 hours. So I don't know what the math is on that. 600% productivity improvement, pretty great. That's what this stuff is really good at because it understood this Snowflake API. It understood the GraphQL, how to put the GraphQL query. It understood how to do the SQL query based on a very scant definition of the tables that were involved. I didn't have it do anything challenging, and I didn't have it do anything I couldn't do. It's just that it helped me move a lot faster on stuff that I was rusty on. So one thing LLMs seem to be horrifically bad at is I'm going to give you a column of numbers and you tell me how many fives are in it. It just for some reason doesn't get that right. It is not good at doing real objective analysis from data sets. I don't think I've run a query a single time over a data set of more than 100 rows where it really got the right answer. So don't use it for that. Use tools that are good for that. Like Excel has plenty of options, or Google Sheets, whatever. Spreadsheets are really good. SQL queries really good at this. There's plenty of options out there. But what I use it for is once the analysis is done and it's accurate, have the LLM explain, like to a 5-year-old, what this analysis means about their process or about their software, or something like that. It's very good at taking a number that is correct and telling you why it's important. It's kind of shockingly good at that. So that's what I use it for. I think it's really good for insights, not the insights themselves, but explaining the insights, if that makes sense, putting them in context. And finally, what I think we need to do is make sure that we have a policy in place, not only for daily usage of the stuff for internal, but also if we're embedding an LLM into our product to sell to other customers, that you have a policy about what you're doing with their data. It's critically important to have that. Another story really quickly is that um, I was involved with a customer recently who was asking us, "What's your AI story?" And rather than use that as a moment to sell them on something, I started with, "Well, we're not using your data to train our LLMs." Like that's the first part of the story. And they were like, "Well, good, because usually when vendors come in here and tell us they have a big AI story, we have to end up putting them through an extra 4 months of review to make sure that they're not going to use our data in any way that's nefarious." I'm like, "No, start with that. Here's our AI policy. We will absolutely not use your data," that kind of thing. So have a policy and make sure that it is enforced, because when you are training a model, doing something for your business, it is absolutely critical that you start from a place of protecting your customers' data. Now, I think the biggest threat to me, that is hanging over the AI and LLM industry right now, is the fact that there is so much money being poured into this thing, and it has yet to take the world by storm in terms of actual usage. Now, I don't have time to go into it, but if you listen to, there's a podcaster named Ed Zitron who does a lot of work around AI, and there's a few other people, Jeffrey Funk and some others. If you look at the actual MAU, weekly average user, monthly average users of things like Copilot and GitHub Copilot and all of the coding tools out there, it is minuscule compared to the predictions of where we would be by this point. Usage is not good. Revenue is not good. They don't have nearly as many paid subscribers as they said they would, and I suspect they have a lot fewer than they say they do, because they're not necessarily held to the same levels of transparency. So I'm talking about Microsoft and Google lumping their AI usage into other numbers and not really giving the full transparent story. Whereas you know that if it were taking the world by storm the way it should, they would headline the numbers around that, the way AWS does now with their cloud revenues. For years, they didn't do that. They buried it in their reports and weren't transparent about it until it became a good line item, positive line item for them. OpenAI lost $540 million in 2023. They lost $5 billion in 2024 against $4 billion in revenue. They made $4 billion. They spent $9 billion to make $4 billion. And they're expected to do even worse this year. And these folks, if you know anything about them, are going to want their money back. What that means is this $20 a month I'm paying to ChatGPT to send it, I'm going to say 15 queries a day. It is pennies compared to what it's actually costing them to support my 20 queries, 15, 20 queries a day. Now, I understand that that's how this game works. Uber, when it first came out, 2008, 2009, you could pay them $5 and they would take you all the way across town. And now it's just as expensive as a taxi cab. They lost money for years on the deliberate plan to raise prices once people got it infected into their bloodstream and they couldn't live without Uber. I understand that that's how the game is played. Unfortunately, this is a little bit different, because what these companies are now doing is, now that they've spent the hundreds of billions of dollars investing in these models, they are now encouraging us, all of us who are vendors and tool makers, they're encouraging us to put these tools into our systems and then resell them to our customers, which means when the chickens come home to roost, when the costs are actually expected to be paid in order for these companies to start being profitable with AI, we are going to have to pass that charge on to our customers, which means that the ROI you're calculating on embedding these tools into your product in 2025 is not accurate to what it's going to be in 2030. Not even close. If LLMs do start to generate the kind of interest in use case and revenue that people are saying every single day on LinkedIn that they will, then at some point these prices are going to go up, maybe by tenfold. I've seen some estimates that say that it really should be more like 1,000-fold. I don't know. It's early. We don't know yet. I'm not even saying this is going to happen because the market is going to drive the prices, not people wanting to get their money back. The problem is we're also dealing with monopolies and confederacies here. We're dealing with a bunch of companies who are colluding with each other to set the prices because they're all the same right now and they're all going to rise together. Now, that's a prediction, and that's not a Sauce Labs prediction. That's just a Marcus prediction. But I am very, very, very afraid that we're heading into a point where if the use case proves out, then we're all going to be paying a lot more for these things. If the use case doesn't bear out, then we're embedding a bunch of tools that are going to disappear at some point once the bubble pops. Those to me are the only two outcomes because this right now, what we're doing, what we're participating in, and what we're going on LinkedIn and reading about and posting about every single day, this is absolutely unsustainable. Also, let's talk about energy consumption. AI is expected in 2027 to use more power than Kazakhstan, Austria, Venezuela, Algeria. I read an estimate recently that said that every single time you query ChatGPT and ask it to write a haiku about, I don't know, about Taylor Swift, write a haiku about Taylor Swift. It's the energy consumption equivalent of running a 60-watt light bulb for 3 full minutes. Just one question, any question. And that doesn't include the amount of energy and money it took to train the models themselves. To me, that's terrifying. And nobody cares. I really have come to the conclusion that Amazon, Anthropic, Grok, Google, Microsoft, nobody cares. I have been told by some leaders in the industry, once quantum computing comes out, it'll all be a thing of the past. And well, I mean, I doubt it. I doubt it simply for the reason that once quantum computing comes out and is able to train models a lot faster and give you answers with a lot less cost, we are going to demand 1,000 times more of it and keep the costs exactly where they are and rising. Now, DeepSeek, still don't really know the story on that one because they came out and said that their training costs are way lower and all that stuff. And then all these other problems came out with it. Like, what do they actually train it on? Is it sustainable? Is it true? Did they actually do what they said they did? How much of it was subsidized? And what are they even doing with our data at this point? So I'm not sure DeepSeek is actually everything that they say it is. Who knows? What I have found is that nobody seems to care. And that makes me sad. Just makes me purely sad. So interesting thing to me is I'm curious for the audience, has AI been a net positive for you or a net negative? For me, it's been a net positive. And my concerns are not with, hey, I've got this great tool and it's really helping me be productive. I do have a great tool and it's helping me. But knowing that I can't rely on it to be accurate, I can't rely on it to be the same from one to the next. And this industry is burning money in a furnace. I can't be guaranteed that the tool is not worth yet what has been paid for it. So what are we doing? Has it been a net negative? Has it been a net positive? Has it been thrust in your hand? I'm curious. I see some folks have said personal positive, company high, chasing negative. Yeah, that's right. To me, I would not say that AI has been thrust upon us because we're being very reserved about where we apply it because we are so obsessively protective of our customer data. We're not allowed to run any queries that are unauthorized against customer data at all. So I don't do any of it with my work. I do it mostly outside of work to do things like Arduino projects and to, like I said, write connectors between CI systems and stuff like that. What I am afraid of is that it's being pushed upon a lot of people because management has been sold a bill of goods that it is a magic hammer. And I got to tell you, my dad would turn down a magic hammer if you offered it to him. He wants to do the work. Like, if we talk about having AI displace the hard part of software development, we're having AI displace the part that we all love about our jobs. Displace the meetings, for God's sake, displace the churn at the bureaucracy and the executive wishy-washiness and the constant strategic changes and That's what you need to displace. Don't displace the meetings. Sorry, don't displace the coding. Coding's the part I like. I would say that same thing with testing. I love the idea of having AI generate analysis because to me, the point of testing is not to find out how well my testing is going, because that's what a lot of tools are doing right now. Testing observability these days is how efficiently are your tests running? And actually, I don't care about that, and neither do your executives. What you care about is what story is your testing telling you about your software and how well it works underneath. That is what AI can do for us. It's pretty hard, but I fully believe that it's going to be better at that than it is at ultimately generating the perfect test case. And also generating the perfect test case. That's the job I want to keep doing. I want AI to do the things that I either don't want to do or can't do on my own. Time check. Do I have 10 minutes or what? How do I got? Sorry, Noah.
No, we do have about 5 to 10 more minutes. Yes.
Okay, great. I think I'm doing all right. So let's go back to 52 minutes. Yeah, 30% boost in productivity means that we're writing code for 15 minutes a day. Is it worth the hundreds of billions to give us 15 minutes a day? I know I'm oversimplifying here, but am I, considering the promises that we've been told? Satya Nadella just last week said the world has yet to turn any of today's AI hype and spending into a meaningful lift in the actual economy. Now, that's today. That's 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. You can see the link here on the thing. Researchers trained on an AI on flawed code. It became a psychopath. ChatGPT, other chatbots are hurting publishers even worse than we thought. Like the entire internet. How many of you have gone to Facebook and just seen this garbage? This is not helping us yet. Now, my friend Titus always tells me innovation comes slower than we hope, but then eventually moves faster than we think. So all the stuff I'm complaining about, maybe it'll be helped, not solved, but mitigated, helped within the next year or two. I'm a little skeptical, but obviously. But at some point, these problems will be solved and will be far better than what we expect. But I'm not really sure we should yet go in on a productivity tool, which I think I cited a source here on this particular thing, but TechCrunch, I believe, found that AI tools are increasing the amount of bad code that needs to be fixed. 78% of developers are spending 30% of their time debugging bad code. $8 million in lost productivity for every 250 application developers who are using AI. Oh, it's temporary, but this is the effect of having a top-down AI strategy where someone just expects that magic now exists. Magic does not exist. So how do we stay productive? First, admit that the magic does not exist. There is no winner in the market. All those vendors I mentioned already. OpenAI is the most famous. They have the most famous CEO, I think. And they are also burning money at the fastest rate. And they're being backed by I don't know how to put it without being rude. The people who are investing in OpenAI and continue to throw money at the furnace to be burned, the firms themselves are getting less and less reputable. If you want to look at it that way. I really want everyone, if there's one takeaway, that you get from this is consider the value you are delivering to your users and how AI can help you do that faster and better, because it absolutely can. Just probably not the way you're being told that it will right now. The tool is just a tool. It's a hammer. Agents are cool, but they won't save us. To me, the first thing when I first saw the word agentic, I was like, well, that's going to be the buzzword of 2025. Like that was it's a slight modification on a word that we use every day. It has the makings of a great buzzword. Hopefully it'll actually go to be meaningful. I think that Block is doing something very interesting with a tool called Goose and the model context protocol that's coming out of, I believe, Anthropic, to write really, really good agents. But I still think that having an AI assistant is kind of like having a toddler who has access to some really, really great dictionaries And I don't really know that you want to hand that toddler the ability to use your credit card to make a flight reservation just yet. I mean, I'm a little, once again, oversimplifying, but agents are only going to be as good as the underlying LLM. And I do think that they're great, and we're going to see some amazing stuff starting now. But I think that we're going to have to start smaller than what the hype bringers are saying at this point. Also, I want you to understand where your data is going and where you feed stuff into the model, how it's being utilized. Um, Paul Paul Grossman, Marcel Visek, I apologize for not putting their last names on here. Jason Arbon, Tariq King, these are testers, people with a testing specific focus who are really, really loud about AI in what I consider to be the right way. Jason Arbon never publishes anything about a tool without proving it. Marcel Visselka also, he will take you through his reasoning and how he developed what he developed, and he will be very upfront about its inadequacies. And to me, those are the people you follow, the people who don't get breathless about what they're trying to promise. And here are some these are words I look out for in marketing. If if you see anything on the left that says that the LLM will understand or will know or will be intuitive or it reasons, like no. I wouldn't say run from the tool. They may not be lying. They may have been told to use these words or whatever. It's just be cautious. Try to look for the hedges. It offsets, it assists, it helps you, it optimizes, it aids, it enables, it enhances. Those are words that I look for to be like, okay, you're being realistic about the actual utility of this thing like this. And like I said, beware of calculating your ROI right now, because from what I understand, deep research it's an amazing LLM that a friend of mine actually has a $200 a month subscription. And he has used it to generate entire conference brochures for marketing materials and research papers about why Playwright and Selenium are different, but still valid tools. But every time you run a query on deep research, if you run a really complicated one, it's rumored that it costs $1,000 just to run a query, single query, on the OpenAI side. You're paying $200 a month, but each query is costing up to $1,000. OpenAI is on track to lose 10 figures in 2025. These people are going to want their money back. So I still think that we are in a hype cycle. I haven't seen any sign that it's going to end anytime soon. And it's fine. At this point, it's a little bit fun to sort of see what people are promising. And it is really fun to use the tools, because right now, while they're still cheap, they're awesome and they're useful and they help me be productive every single day. But just don't accept that they're just going to make your whole thing, whatever, better. Also watch out for warning signs in the industry. Microsoft is canceling hundreds of megawatts of data center contracts because the ROI has not shown up for them yet. These are the kinds of harbingers of the bubble that I'm afraid of. And OpenAI is even starting to promise a little bit less if you listen to what Sam Altman is saying these days. So I believe that is all I have today. Just some very simple overview, and I think that's probably what I've got for you. I really appreciate everyone's time. I talked a lot there, gave a lot of information. Some of it may be outdated because I only wrote this a week ago, but it's hard.
I think, thank you, Marcus, for this. I think this is a refreshing, approach about AI, because there's definitely a buzz. I tend to say that it's very hard to go into any call nowadays without mentioning of AI and its magic and its promise. I just yesterday I spoke with someone that I quoted. I think it's Anthropic CEO, who said that he expected that in 2026, 50% of the code will be written by AI. Then in 2027, 100% of the code will be written by AI. And then I read a LinkedIn comment about that in 2028, we're going to go back to 50%. Because that's right. The fact that the tech can support some kind of capability doesn't mean that it should, and doesn't mean that it replaces the people, the perception, their ability to do it correctly. And I will mention just one more thing before we'll wrap up. We do a lot of work with Gartner. Will also mention on the Gartner report. And one thing I like about the way Gartner addresses AI is the fact that they're using, in the context of testing, they're talking about AI augmented testing tools, and not AI related, because AI It's benefit when it's augmented our capabilities. This is when we are seeing it useful. I haven't mentioned it before, but I do want to mention this. Obviously, you know, like any other company, Practice does have AI capabilities, and I invite you to come and see them. Okay, but as you mentioned, for example, we use LLM to generate test steps, but we treat them as baseline. And then we say, this is an interactive module. This is a starting point to save you a lot of time. And then look at it, refine it, correct it, adjust it, and then go on. Okay, this is augmenting your ability. This is a baseline to start with. This is a good starting point, but it's not the end, and it doesn't replace what we do.
Yeah, I think the winners in this part of the market are going to take that approach and not say we're just going to be magic for you and it'll replace everything. Like that's my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Cool.
We're just wrapping the time. So I'm going to thank you. I think that was refreshing. We had people engaging, so I'm not alone in this thought. We're going to share the recording in case you want to revisit it. And we invite you to join our next month webinar. It's going to be published very soon. Thank you all for being with us today. And thank you again, once again, Marcus. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.